Nilqakom magħna episodju ieħor, another esteemed episode ta' Fil-Qosor with your illustrious and glorious hosts Andrea
Jake.
and today
Fil-Qosor.
Għatu kazi, we're the hosts, that's the whole point. Imma illum, mux waħedna, again, illum għanna a certain very special someone.
Bonġu. Mela, jiena Keaton, ma nafx il-għala daħaltuni dal-ħodu, imma sejtuni biex nitwal. Xaħseb, what will be my introduction mela?
Li trid, preferably your name, it's a very good start.
Wasalt sa ismi ta' ġifiri.
What are the three best words to describe you? Keaton Agius was the third one.
Keaton Agius, the third.
The third.
That's 2 words, but we'll give it to you. Maħax il-kafe dal-ħodu, clearly.
Le, ma kellix ċansinħu l-kafe, daħaltuni xistabaw nofta ferrodu.
Dispjaċini.
Mela,
Fejt uqot?
jiena, ifem, noqgħod il-gowdja konti jed il-kalkara, ma għandi tfajla, so.
Għandak punt,
Mela.
għandak punt.
Straight to it, mela. Jien Keaton, palissa set nistudja l-emka, set nistudja finanzi, u naħseb, daħaltuni dal-ħodu għax sena l-oħra publikajt ħtieb minn jeddi.
So,
That's exactly what spot on, Mr. Keaton.
Ostra.
Exactly. Mela, as you said, you published a book, obviously. This is obviously a very special type of book to you because it's a poetry book. Issa, inti, għalfej għazilt il-poetry as your main outlet, especially your main form of writing?
Ifem, main form of writing. Honestly, there's not a straight answer to it. It's more that it's just always something that I have done. Doesn't make sense personally because in my youth, I read a lot of fantasy, I read a lot of narrative books, but did not read very much poetry at all. When it came to then writing myself, I did not find an outlet in doing that myself, but doing something different. And just experimenting with it. And it took a long time of experimentation before I was very comfortable to actually, okay, I can give this to the public and they can suffer reading it as well.
Mela, okay, all right. Ma, ovvjament, I've seen your book, I've read your book in passing, and I think, why Maltese specifically? Għalfej il-Malti? Għax poezija ġa hija ħaġa fis-sens, it's a very niche thing, right? Would you agree with that?
Well, definitely.
And Maltese poetry is even niche-er, I think is the term.
Niche, yeah. Well, the book is both in English and Maltese. And I do predominantly write in English, though Maltese does fit the mood based on the language's characteristics, depending what I'm writing, really.
Taħseb li l-Malti iktar espressiv?
Espressiv fej jidħol huwa PG-13, nissuponi l-Campus FM, mela.
Eżatt.
Għax kont musa kelma oħra. Fis-sens ta' meta jkollok ċertu sens ta' rabja ġo fik, meta tkun diżollus kważi. Sfortunatament fl-istorja Maltija, atteġġjament komuni għal daw l-aħħar mijiet ta' snin.
Tkolla dak ħireġ mill-Knisja, kważi ħataqgħu l-ewwel kelma toħroġ mhix sabiħa.
Ekku. Ġifieri mbagħad meta impoġġi ftit drabi issa li impoġġi biex actually nikteb xi ħaġa u ngħid alright, irrid inneħħi dir-rabja minn fuq l-istonku tiegħi bil-Malti toħroġ awtomatikament minn moħħi, mhix ħaġa li nażel biex nagħmel.
It depends on mood, ġifieri. U tagħmel sens għax inti fl-aħħar mill-aħħar poeżija dem biex tikteb il-għalas immaġina you elicit an emotional response.
Preċis.
Allura għalhekk tikteba bl-emotional response mill-bidu.
Eżatt.
So do you think that your Maltese poems are more powerful than your English ones?
I don't think it's a matter of my thought because I don't think much about it, though I have received a lot of comments in that sense. Għaw Malta din ta' ġifiri, fl-axħar mill-axħar ġifiri ħafna nisa jiġu fuq jgħidu il-kilba tiegħek bil-Malti jisbaħ mill-li bl-Ingliż għax aħna Malta din go back to your country. Imma meta tikteb bil-Malti, palmet inti hija nix tħoss hija ħafna iktar autentika, kważi, mhux għax iktar powerful, imma jekk jien qed nuża l-Malti għax ġej minn sens ta' rabja li hija powerful minna nifisha, l-hemmhekk immorru.
Tinħass fil-kitba.
Interesting.
Bermja, yeah.
So, inti għalfej il-poezija, why does you writing poetry elicit such powerful emotions from your end?
Being able to shout at my laptop through words while writing instead of at whatever in the world has, ticked me off or whatever has made me feel what I'm feeling. Anki per eżempju, meta nikteb xi ħaġa li hija sabiħa, xi ħaġa li nista' nżomm għal dejjem. Dik hija ħaġa sabiħa ngħidilha jiena. It's something that holds.
So you feel a personal connection with poems, imma bil-fors like multi poems, English poems, ġifieri?
Both really. Depends on what connection you're trying to form and what you're feeling at the moment. Per esempio, ma naħsibx li jiena f'ħajti, xi ħaġa li forsi għandi nesperimenta, qatt ktib xi ħaġa bil-Malti f'sens pożittiv. Qatt ma ħass ġieli ktibt ħafna affarijiet f'sens pożittiv, imma dejjem imbagħad f'moħħi awtomatikament joħroġ bl-Ingliż.
Okay, interesting. That's a very interesting point, actually. Vera.
Dik tidħol imbagħad il-kultura ta' bilingualizmu.
Qed naħseb biex jiena eżempju automatically nkun fejn kun immur biex nitkellem bil-Malti, ma xi raġuni f'moħħi nibda naħseb l-Ingliż. U di provajt nispjegaha l-missieri ġimgħa l-oħra naħseb u ma femnix, ma bedix.
Possibbli biex tifhem.
Kif inti titkellem bil-Malti imma taħseb l-Ingliż? U jiena fil-verità ġenwinament hekk naħseb l-Ingliż. U mbagħad xi kultant irid insib kelma bil-Malti biex inkellem l missieri irid noqgħod naħseb x'inhi nittraduċi mill-Ingliż għal-Malti. Ġifieri għandek punt validu fuq il-bilingualizmu u Malta hija ħaġa kbira.
Eżempju ieħor, palissa jien qed nitgħallem ir-Russu.
Tistra?
Very difficult. But qed insibha diffiċli, so jien qed nirrabja ġifieri jiena meta nipprova nitkellem bil-Russu, qed naħseb bil-Malti għax jien irrabjat irrid nittraduċi għall-Ingliż imbagħad ar-Russu. Hekk toħroġ.
A triple whammy.
They're confusing. Dik l-istess mod kif jien nipprovajt nitgħallem l-Ispanjol, naf it-Taljan traduċi mill-Malti għat-Taljan għall-Ispanjol.
Diffiċli ħafna. Even learning a new language on its own is already like an incredible daunting task.
Tipprova tikteb il-poeżija bil-Russu?
Lords too.
Il-poeżija title I want rice imma bil-Russu.
What would that be in Russian? Prattika.
U min jarisa, daqshekk.
Ma, la, he knows it.
He knows it at least.
Well, I would imagine,
As that I would imagine, of course, as you know.
Fejta, forsi għat l-iktar ħaġa bla sens, offendejtkom kull ma
Nimmaġina.
Le.
Us, the two Russian people, eżat.
We secretly know Russian.
Ija, il-rabti u l-Bormlis.
Niet. Bormlis?
Mux mill-Bormla. Mela minn fejn int? Jew mill-Isla.
Irrid nikta poezija bil-Malta palissa, Keaton palissa biex tgħidlek.
Rejt imbagħad ippubblikaw itfaħħa ma' street lights tal-Bormla. X'tagħmel?
Mal-Monti tal-Birgu jissammur mbagħad. Mela, ukoll. Inti what are your main inspirations for writing? As in, is there any sort of Maltese poet, English poet that you felt a connection with and you thought, I feel inspired by this work and I'm like, wow, I want to make this?
There's a few indirect ones and there's one particularly direct one, especially the way I did come to publish. When it comes to the Maltese side, I think one that has always, her entire story and journey here that has always just stuck with me is Maria Greccanato. Mux offiża lejħat, imma naħseb anki jiena jrid imbaxxir rasi lejha. Għax eżempju li mux jiena akademiku ħanoqgħod nikteb għax nifhem il-poeżija. Għax jiena ġejt l-Università u studjajt il-Malti ħanikteb il-poeżija jien espert grazzi. Ixtri li l-ktieb, ixtri li l-kollezzjoni. Kitbet għax ħasset. U jidher ħafna f'kitbieta. Fejn mbagħad jidħol more direct, awtur ieħor, part American, part Iranian, F.S. Yusuf. And I won't get into his writing. Sure, I liked his writing. But the main thing that really intrigued me was the way he went about publishing, which was the exact same way I then followed in his footsteps to do it, which is through Amazon. They have a direct publishing service that basically me that does not have the capital,
Mhm.
I could go ahead and do something like that. Per esempio, jiena bdejt, alright, ħanamela e-book. Intu oġob li e-book tajjeb, issa mbagħad irranġajt u dawwar ċertu affarijiet u ġibtu ktieb, press. Dik biex tagħmilha u Malta. Hija spiża kbira. U tagħmel sens spiża kbira. Imma jiena li m'għandix minn fejn kull m'għandi FM. Il-ġimgħa d-dieħla nagħlaq 20. Biex tmur għand publishing house u tihom 3,000 euro l-lum il-ġurnata għalija mhix feasible.
Not feasible.
No.
And for how many copies would you get if it's say for like this?
FM, no, you would have gotten quite a few for that. It's fair. There's no disrespect to it. It's more just being able to do it. Għalhekk ħafna nies għaw Malta għal daw il-tipi ta' proġetti jserħu fuq il-gvern u jserħu fuq ċertu schemes u grants. Għax qas jista' jkun.
All right.
U mhux qed ngħidu fl-aħħar mill-aħħar l-industrija hi x'inhi.
You can't blame the industry for what it is.
Hi x'inhi, it-tip jien naf li jiena personalment jien li nikteb il-poeżija ma noħroġ iktar minn darba fis-sena biex nixtri ktieb minn hawn Malta stess. Qasab wara l-poeżija. Dik hi
Inti x'taħseb li tista' tagħmel biex li jista' jsir biex jitranġa?
Nifhem, għandi ħafna opinjonijiet fuq hekk.
By all means.
Floor is yours.
The floor is yours. You have a microphone.
Well, the table.
Minajr office lejħad, jiena ovvjament naħseb Andre iktar minnek Jake taf nisew l-opinjonijiet tiegħi. Naħseb li il-poeżija sa ċertu punt ta' Malta ħatkun u dejjem se tibqa' sagrifiċċju. U iktar ma tipprova taħseb li mhijiex u li alright, jiena ħriġ ktieb imbagħad daħħal ċaġa fil-but. Jekk mhux qed ngħid, naħseb qas persuna wieħed ma jopera dik il-mentalità consciously, imma ovvjament tipprova Imma naħseb li l-unika mod li dik tista' tirnexxi hawn Malta li toħroġ ktieb. Imma li hija mhux veru ħriġtu, għax ħriġ ktieb biex taħlu ilek fil-libreri tal-iskola għax ħadd grant minn għand il-gvern, eċċetera. U daw it-tipi ta' affarijiet li huma ta' inizjattivi tajbin ħafna, speċjalment min għandu ħajtu literalment marbut direttament ma' daw l-affarijiet. Imma is that really publishing imbagħad? That's always the question I've had seeing it from the outside. Ftakru li jiena dan għamiltu bla bda esperjenza.
You feel it's inauthentic, Isu?
Not, definitely not inauthentic.
Okay.
It's still authentic. Imma I don't think it is. Ma nafx, jien għand independence, ovvjament, having done it myself and being on that little high horse, I'm very self-conscious of it, that it is a bit of a high horse. That lack of independence and actually doing stuff for people to read it and then just letting sleeping dogs lie, that's it. Ma nafx, I'm not sure if it's...
Ġifieri, inti taħseb li mawx ħafna nies qed jieħdu inizjattiva biex jippromovu. Li naqbel miegħek, ġifieri.
Ifhem, ma ntihom xtort lanqas.
Eħex.
Hija ħaġa storikament mela aħna Malta għadħaj kolna xi bażi kbira fejn tista' tbieħ ktieb, speċjalment tal-poeżija. Nixtieq kieku, imma irridu kun hawn rivoluzzjoni kulturali għall-aħħar li qas biex nibqgħu Maltin. Mhux qed ngħidha para ħaġa ħażina ta' ġifieri, aħna trid tiftakar min jaf kemm il-sena taħt dik u liħor, but kważi xismu, 200 sena taħt l-Ingliżi. Mela aħna bejna, orrejt, ħammur id-dar, u naqra l-poezija, ħan nieħu gost bl-arti. Hu xismu, it-teatru li muqqalbelt. Dik, arti kbira f'Malta konna namlu l-opri ġo fija, għal min kienet, mux għalina, għall-Ingliżi kienet. U sal-indipendenza. Repubblika whatever biex ma nofendu l-ħadd. Dejjem kienet hekk, l-arti ma kienitx għalina. Għalina, l-affarijiet għalina li kienu tagħna kienet artna, kienet familtna, daqshekk.
Malta kellna vera ftit ċans biex nifokaw fuq l-arti u whatever tagħna. Għax dejjem qed nifokaw ninkwetaw fuq ħaġa li kienet ħafna iktar importanti.
Tifhem li għalhekk 70% tal-
L-opinjoni tiegħek l-arti meta kien beda f'Malta, pereżempju, beginnings of Maltese writing, dak ukoll tajt it was for the English per se?
Ifhem.
Not particularly, le.
Sibx imbagħad.
Ma naħsibx le, għax per esempio Who Don't Care
Mm.
li kien FM. Nafu x'kien fl-aħħar mill-aħħar. It doesn't mean it was for the English, imma biex imbagħad eventwalment nibet l-arti li tista' tgħid li huwa personali,
Mhm.
mhux fis-sens nazzjonali biss jew temi ikbar biss, domna ħafna. Per esempio, għalhekk illum il-ġurnata ħares li ħafna mill-poeżija Malti sabiħ immens.
Mhm.
Imma kemmu minnu, għalhekk naħseb li Marja Grekka għadu veru baqgħet miegħi minnu kemmu personali. Per esempio, li qed jiena, di aħna kellna ma kienx l-arti kellna familtna u kellna artna. Kemm għandna poeżiji fuq artna? Fuq il-wied. Fuq kif dak il-wied inqered. And rightly so, ta' ġifieri.
Mhm.
Imma dak imbagħad it's just poetry as a means rather than poetry as an outlet.
Mhm.
So it's poetry.
Niftakar fil-poezija ta' Fjuro ibni Kamra li għafa.
Poezija
level.
incredibly.
Inkredibli ħafna ħer.
U nagħti ġieħli l-Immanuel Mifsud. U ukoll għandu ħafna xogħol, ħafna minn kitbietu li huwa personali, bħal m'għandhom ħafna poeti Maltin. Imma mbagħad x'jibqa' mal-poplu.
Mhm.
Hija ħaġa li pereżempju tmur x'imkien ieħor fl-Ewro x'imkien ieħor fid-dinja xi iktar personali li tirreżona iktar. Għax għandek iktar ċans tipprova tappella li l-emozzjonijiet tiegħek ma' emozzjonijiet ta' xi ħadd ieħor personalment. Għandna sal-lum ġurnata ma tantx għandna ċans nagħmlu għadik naħseb.
Mhm. Interessanti.
Fejna moħħna
Int taħseb li f'Malta l-poezija ntużat iktar biex twassal messaġġ milli biex tuża bħala espressjoni artistika.
Poetry for the sake of poetry, so qed tajt. Jew
l-oppost qed jgħid
Jien
naħseb.
qed ngħid
jew
li
l-oppost.
il-poezija u Malta intużat ħafna biex speċjalment meta jiġu ħabba l-Ingliżi u whatever biex tesprimi l-messaġġ ta' isma' guys, għandna xi ħaġa mhux qiegħda sew.
Mhm.
U dik jgħamin ħafna arti tintuża mhux ġast il-poezija, s'intendi. Però naħseb il-poezija u Malta ntużat iktar għalhekk milli ntużat ġast biex tesprimi l-opinjoni jew ġast tesprimi il-valur artistiku tagħha.
Jiena l-opinjoni tiegħi li għadhem ħafna ċans biex imbagħad tesprimi l-opinjoni tagħha, eċetera. Is-sens ta' poeżija. Għadna fil-bidu, dik ħaġa li naħseb bħala poplu ninsew aħna bħala pajjiż għasirna niżistu mit-sena. Independenti Repubblika.
Mhm.
Ġifieri wettaqna ħafna. Imma f'dak iż-żmien u dak iż-żmien wara naqbel bil-ġara u naħseb li l-poeżija għalhekk kellna bżonna
Mhm.
bħala a means. Issa ovvjament jiena li nimbagħad nara ninsa kull kuntest politiku, kull kuntest storiku kollox impoġġi bil-qed u ngħid alright jiena imbagħad nara mod differenti li ngħid alright. Forsi nistgħu nużawha sempliċement biex tisprimi ruħek imbagħad tmur id-dar u torqod.
Mhm.
U daqshekk, it can be that simple. Hija l-istess mod li għalleġ xi ħadd jikteb Facebook post. Jaqred fuq, literalment hija l-istess ħaġa li hija li inti iddejjaqt b'xi ħaġa, fraħt b'xi ħaġa u mort taqsmu ma' oħrajn.
Just a different medium.
Ekku, perfett, eżatt.
Naqbel miegħek.
So how would you say, for example, inti kif tista' tgħid il-poeżija, do you think poetry has evolved throughout the years?
Nifhem, f'liema kontest has it evolved, qed ngħidu Pokemon u jew
No, as in
like in Malta you're saying specific.
eżatt, as in did it evolve in the sense li forsi fil-mod traktieb, per esempio, to be more appealing to a general audience, that's the sort of thing I'm saying. Or do you think it should change in order for poetry to be more appealing to the masses?
Nifhem.
Do you think it would do any good to it or any bad?
I don't think specifically poetry can change to appeal to the masses because the poetry already existent already appeals to it. B'dik li kontet ngħid, per eżempju għandna ħafna poezija ta' li literalment tippersonifika il-sens ta' dardir li għandna dak li jiġi f'pajjiżna bħalissa ġifieri u met ngħid xejn partit jew ieħor ġenwinament affarijiet ħażin jiġru u l-poezija hija medium biex imbagħad nagħmlu dik il-balla minn fuq l-istonku. Tifhem? Evolved, and dik il-ħaġa for personal poetry naħseb jiena li iktar tifoka fuq problemi ferm isar, ferm iktar minute u when it's all said and done jintesew ħadd ma jitkellem fuqhom eċċetera. Għax ovvjament dik hija ħaġa personali tiegħek. Biex il-masses tibda tirresa ma' xi ħaġa hekk. Sa ċertu punt tista' tgħidli ħaġa kważi ħażina. Għax dak ifisser li huma iktar jimportom minn dawn l-affarijiet żgħar milli l-affarijiet kbar li huma għaddejjin li parsajm il-fokus fuqhom. So jidħol l-evolution tal-poezija f'Malta naħseb li jien minix xed li jista' jagħti tweġiba informata dwarha għax fl-aħħar mill-aħħar jiena għaw komunità kbira ta' poeti u nies li jifmu fil-litteratura, eccetera. Dawn qegħdin hawnhekk ġifieri. U jien qiegħed hawnhekk, naħa l-oħra tal-kamra. M'għandix naqsam mhux ħabba fihom ħabba fijax. Minix mallem bħalhom u minix fis-sens hija kwestjoni ta' edukat, minix edukat bħalhom. Fl-aħħar mill-aħħar jiena ħajti qed inkompli qed nistudja l-finanzi bħalissa. Mhux qed ngħid orrejt jiġobni poezija nkompli fiha, and more for them ta' ġifieri. Imma naħseb ir-risposta fuq l-evoluzzjoni tal-poezija tkun iktar xierqa minn għandhom milli minn għandi. Tifhem?
Fair enough. I mean, naħseb evolvit just il-fatt li għandek it-teknoloġija l-lum il-ġurnata u kull ħaġa tista' tikteb hija ħafna iktar disseminata easily.
Huda minni. Jien xkodna minn it-teknoloġija, per eżempju. U jiena mur lura fi żmien qodnot naħseb ħamurru lura l-Manuel Mifsud. Bata ħafna biex eventualment actually jippubblika l-poeżiji tiegħu. Meta l-ewwel beda jippubblika, sfurzaw biex jippubblika r-romanzi. Għax dak kien popolari dak iż-żmien. Ara jiena literalment f'tem ta' xarej, issa dom niktem f'tem ta' xarej, batti sieħbi kien jaf feġna aktar teknoloġija minni fi jidħol imbagħad editing tar iktibu kollox biex tkun surit in-nies u pubblikajnija. Printjaw kollox Poland, ordnajthom għal hawnhekk, hemm Bobġer anke ru. Kelli nanti kif ħanaqra ħda, hu e-book, nanti toqgħod l-Ingilterra. Evolvit b'dik il-mod żgur, forsi l-poeżija ma nbidlitx, imma
jiena naħseb
il-mod kif
delivery
it-teknoloġija tgħin biex mhux tippromuovi, però tgħin biex mass production fl-aħħar mill-aħħar hekk tiġi u mass dissemination. Però fl-istess ħin ma naħsibx li jekk kien jgħidu tagħmel graf ta' kemm jużaw nies il-poeżija u tara żmien. Ma naħsibx li ola bħalma ola dissemination dik il-ħaġa. U dik ir-raġuni il-mistoqsija mela x'ġara biex il-poeżija saret iktar aċċessibbli imma xi raġuni inqas popolari.
Faċli immensa lija. Qegħdin f'dinja fej inti fej qatt tmur id-dar u li qed jiekol ħanaqra ktieb waqt li qed niekol. Titfa' Netflix, titfa' YouTube u tara u tisma' u hija ħaġa iktar appellanti. Ħaġa li jiena ħassejt ħafna naħseb li alright. Nitfa' poezija 10 likes fuq il-page. Nitfa' ritrattijaj naqra poezija 100. Hija ovvjament din hija wider issue ta' short form content.
The attention economy, yes.
Ifhem. Aħna fhem l-istess tipa minna mur lura bej ħartej meta konna nagħmluh Malti jew level Katrin tal-imdina li twal waħda. Kemm konna neqirdu fuq għax kien twil u ma kellniex il-paċenzja naqrawh. Meta fil-verità kull ma ddum taqrah taf kemm 3 minuti 4. Biex tifhem forsi iddum iktar tomoda. Palissa qed nagħmlu podcast ta' sija. Tmur id-dar, tara episode ta' sija u nofs. Our way of digesting media has changed a lot.
Hemm apatija fuq affarijiet bħal poeżija u kitba ġenerali ta' fil-verità.
As in, again, iktar bħal kif qed inti il-mod, il-poezija jizet inkorporat l-nifsa in other mediums, par kifet, per eżempju, fil-videos, per eżempju,
Mux hekk, eżatt.
inti taqra, il-mużika, music, lyrics are essentially, is essentially just poetry. Tifimni?
Done well, yes.
Done well, tifimni? But it's, regardless, it is still poetry, which brings me to my next point. What is this is something completely gear shift. What do you think separates a good poet from a bad poet?
Enough whiskey.
Wait, does the whiskey make you a better poet or a worse poet? I think that's
Well,
the
I
actual
think-
question.
I
It depends
think-
on the person, naħseb.
To answer that, I think you will need even more whiskey. Well, that's it. Ifhem.
Sips
It is.
water,
It's.
ovvjament.
Iva.
Like mux whiskey, oh.
Nishtiq.
Dal.
Yeah, I'm not that bad. Obviously, initially I'm going to go down the it's all subjective route.
That's the safe answer.
That's the safest.
That is the safest answer, naturalment. Again, I'm going to go to my second safest route, which is I don't think I am the person to have the opinion of who is a good, who is a bad, what is a good, what is a bad poet.
I sense a butt coming.
But.
Ovvjament, ifhem. Xorta ħanibqa' mal-linja ta' ċertu subjectivity ta' ġifieri, imma ma tistax taħbim warajja wkoll. Per eżempju jiena meta l-ewwel bdiet nippubblika tħadd asnaf kemm il-grupp mimli asnaf kemm il-kultura ta' nies biex noqgħod nixxerja ċertu offert m'għandix nagħmilha għax m'għandix paċenzja, ma fil-bidu għamilta. U għadni nara ħafna minnhom daw il-poeżiji. And more for them, ta' ġifieri, imma naħseb li a good poet is a poet that publishes bad poetry and takes the criticism. U daqshekk. Because I consider myself one of those. I don't consider myself a good poet. I consider myself someone who's learning. U meta xaġej li actually oġbu xaġa li ktibt, dika li it means the word to me. Sempliċi fatt li jiena kull darba li nistenna opinjoni mhix ħaġa ta' insecurity, hija ħaġa ta' fatt li jien naf li hija ħaġa amateur li hija ħaġa li għadni nisperimenta. Per eżempju kelli xi ħadd naħseb l-iktar ħaġa li kont apprezzajt fl-FTG matwar li pubblikajt tani full breakdown u review ta' x'oġbux moġbux. Kull poeżija. And this was coming from, obviously, not my field, it was coming from an English student. Ġifieri, here at uni, it's helpful. Nasa persona li tista' tkun l-ittieb poeta. Jekk xi ħadd imorlek jgħidlek imma xi ġifieri bdi, kemm komplikata żejjed. U tibżollu f'wiċċu, I call you a bad poet then. Because at the end of the day, poetry is a medium. Jekk trid tikteb għalik infusek u tifmu int biss, xi ħaġa li jien kont nagħmel ħafna qabel ukoll. Li kont nikteb u nagħmel ċertu referenzi u ċertu play on words li nifhom jiena biss. They mean nothing, they're fluff to anyone else. So ma malik, enjoy them. Imma mbagħad, jekk veru tipprova tuża il-poeżija bħala medium għal oħrajn, il-ħaġa trid tasal, trid twassala. It's a very simple, daw l-aħħar snin, very, very, very populist way of thinking. We go into the same line of thinking, but politically, li simplify your speech so it can be understood. Mux titlaw turi kem taf klim tal-avokati.
Appealing to the masses.
There's no need to fluff your words. If your message comes across, that's what matters in essence.
I wouldn't even call it appealing to the masses, it's just appealing. It's just understandable. Ma t-pressjoni għal-ħata xtuża kelma, għalleċ naħseb għadda fuq il-mobile. Qabel ma publikajt kif ked literalment, app, new word every day. U daw il-klim li qatt ma tuża f'ħajtek. U kont nitallimhom, which is a good thing. Imma xi ħamur nikteb poezija bihom. And I won't even come away with anything from that, let alone a reader. So, that for me is a bad poet.
So,
That's a very good answer.
it's a very good answer, in fact. Vera.
So, tajjeb, I made that up just now, so.
So, do you, as a poet, do you think that poetry should be encouraged as an art form? Even Do you consider even a simple Facebook post to be poetry? As like how you said yourself, if the
No.
meaning comes across.
You
But-
wouldn't call it poetry. It is simply in the same line of conveying a message or conveying your personal feelings. It wouldn't be poetry. Poetry is writing it in a certain way and making it in a certain way.
Fin sesset ngħidlek tikteb il-post in a certain way, would that still be poetry? Tifhimni? If it's not technically writing, if your meaning still, if you're...
Ifhem, jina personalment naħseb u mal-veru ftit poezi li għakxi ktibt bidejja, għax naħseb inta fiktar minn ħaddiħor xkont tisri level miegħi Andre, kemm għandi handwriting zibel. Li qasni nifmu wara li mur nħares l ġifiri jen digital person ħafna. Ġifiri li tikbu fuq Facebook.
I once tried to ask you for notes. I looked down at your notes and I was like, you know what? I'm better off without them.
And you rushing all along.
You're rushing all along. It was foreshadowing, eżatt.
Da.
Da.
Ajma.
Imma, if you want to go on Facebook and use that as your medium, talna digital word il ġurnata, naħseb għandek xorti ikbar li twassal għan ċaħat u actually tesprimi ruħek ma' iktar nies. U forsi u kol, trying to be a good poet, receive criticism for it, then publishing it in a book, it goes into a few secondary school libraries and is never touched again. And I'm not, and this is no offense to anyone who has gone down that route who has books in libraries, għaxina di kolma tiegħu kolli xi darba għal madofiet fawni MJU, imma. You have to realize that we're moving digital nowadays. It is a collector's item, a book. It's not it's moving away from medium to a certain extent.
Books are getting old.
Yeah.
And that's sad, ġifieri.
But I would disagree with you on this. I think books are still very relevant in my personal opinion. They
will always hold relevance.
It was maybe not as much as it used to, because again, like how you said, we are always digitally evolving, but books have also evolved.
But we've also
e-books.
We have also evolved to become more lazy.
Mhm.
So accessing an e-book, all right, you have to download this app, you have to download the Kindle app, and then actually pay for it to buy the e-book. We are becoming extremely more. As soon as media is more accessible, if you don't move alongside it, you are left behind.
So instant gratification.
For example, I will always
For sure.
I will always prefer a book. I'm a person. I carry a book wherever I go. I like to read as much as I can, and that's what I grew up doing. Ġifieri. That is my way. It's not kieku kellek tgħidli biex naqra e-book, personalment, not my style. Nasab qatt ma milta. Nulla e-book li ġiri rajt nedetja tiegħi stess. Xi sija ta' filgħodu, nedetja full stops l-ewwel hemm. Dik l-unika e-book li actually rajt bajnija sissa. Imma so inti ma taqbilx kieku għan li Facebook post tista' tkun hekk, the same medium as a book for poetry, and you go off of that.
Man, I disagree with it, because I think if you sit down and take the time for it, which is asking a lot for people to sit down and take the time, which is a fair point, but I think a book can still have the same impact as enough if you saw a Netflix show, if not more. I think books have more detail in them. They have more of a presence. They enable places in your brain which you normally don't enable. You know what I mean? And you're a book reader. You would understand this.
And I definitely agree, but I will play devil's advocate. Because in the world of interviews...
L-ironija inti you're playing devil's advocate, mux jiena.
No, I know. But in the world of interviews, you're the digital media. A podcast. Why shouldn't we have done an interview, you write it down, and you publish it properly, either as a formal article, or you put it in, naf li saħat ejduli, dikija iktar anachronistika, minktib for sure, a newspaper. No, you're moving alongside, which I agree with, what people are flocking towards, which is more accessible, real. Per esempio, xaħat li jmur fuq Facebook u jikteb, u jitfa poezija. Nofsu maffeċ, nofsu Malti as jeżisti. And then he'll take it and then he'll edit it. I think that is what something that resonates a lot more than something that is pristine, perfect. And you read it and you feel like it's above you. It's more accessible.
It's more
That's
real.
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 When something is authentic, it comes off.
Dickie.
And it appeals more to the emotion of the reader, and that's why music is so great, because music always, with the music, you have an emotional... music itself, you don't even need lyrics to have emotional, an emotional effect on you, but the lyrics help.
Two rocks clanging against each other is technically music as well.
Yes, of course. But that is very sad music.
It's caveman music. I don't know about you. What I normally listen to.
Imma jina eżempju, jina mill-mużika, I'm a big Pink Floyd fan. Usually I don't really care about lyrics in music. Imma I just couldn't not do that with Pink Floyd, and it's revolutionary, ġifieri.
Dickie.
But also because I want to add to my point as well from before. What about audiobooks, for example? What about...
I was meant to make one this summer, and I just never got around to doing it. Though, yes, I was going to do it more in a funny way. I was going to get my friend, who is very good at impersonations, to read out every poem in a different voice. And then I was going to publish the audiobook. I still might do it, just haven't gotten around to doing it. And audiobooks are... I'm not sure if they are the preferred medium. I don't know if that is the way the world is going, particularly.
To me personally, I slightly tip towards audiobooks rather than normal books. Because again, it stimulates me more. There's more stimulation in reading a book than to listen to a book, in my opinion.
All right.
Like, for example, I didn't read The Lord of the Rings. I listened to it. And I think that it was more immersive and it was more...
Specialment dik ikollok xi narrator,
Eżatt, with like a silky smooth voice.
I know for the audiobooks of Harry Potter, the voice was made by Stephen Fry. Now, if you know everything about Stephen Fry, that's a nice voice to listen to. And again, it's about the emotionality. The words are just the words. The way someone says them changes the whole...
Exactly. Like you can have just a word "what." The way you read it can be in many different things.
many different ways.
Exactly.
Definitely.
What?
I don't know if that will translate. No, this is just something I'm spitballing now. If that will translate to poetry, mind you. Because in a book, yes, you infer your own meaning. And I think you should do it with poetry as well. But I don't think, especially when it comes to poetry, you should be too heavy-handed with it. For example, something I never do, except for some of my close friends, is explain in particular detail what my poems mean. Because I know a lot of people who have different interpretations of them. And I like that, and I think that's good. So I think me putting my own emotionality on it and trying to hint at certain things on certain words and put emphasis on different places can be good, can be bad. I'm sure it's being done, audiobooks for poetry, but it has to be done very well.
You don't think it has the same effect, Iso? Or it again, maybe...
Depends why you read poetry.
Maybe the readers, the person who's narrating the poetry maybe has a different interpretation of the actual poet itself, which opens a whole other can of worms.
I mean, you go around in circles, because then you go, okay, do you not want to give too much of your own interpretation? You want to leave it up to the reader, but then how much do you want to do that and to what extent? And it just keeps going round. It's something that I think is something that the individual writer should experiment with.
Dina, mbagħad dak il-każ jiġi up to the author's discretion, ovvjament. Jiena naf ma nafx poetry as a whole, però niftakar fil-film Interstellar. Hemm il-poezija ta' Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. And can I tell you what it means? Absolutely not. What I can tell you is that
what it means to you.
No. What I can say is just how I felt listening to it. Especially, with Michael Caine's voice. I mean, or Matthew McConaughey's voice. Point being is that even if you don't actually elicit a meaning from poetry, in my opinion, you can still be very, how do you say, affected emotionally. And I think that's the same point of a movie, and it's the same point of a song, and it's the same point of any sort of artistic creativity.
I'm going to chew on that one. That is a really, really interesting point.
I don't think it's about
really going to chew on that.
always getting the meaning. I think the point
No, for sure. But it's not even about them getting their own, you're saying. And I find that really interesting. It's just being left with a feeling.
Yes.
You have to interpret the
Damn,
meaning
okay.
itself. Like you listen and you feel.
I am reminded of a recent. There was a recent video where Christopher Nolan was discussing Oppenheimer, and there was this meme where it said, "My dating life is like a Christopher Nolan movie. Nobody knows what's going on." And you know what Christopher Nolan to that meme, he said, "Don't care about the meaning, just feel it." And I'm like, that's exactly the point of artistic creativity, in my opinion. I don't think it's about the meaning sometimes. I think it's just about how do you feel after witnessing whatever you witnessed.
I think a very good example of that in actual, let's go, painted art is landscapes. When it comes to what I look for in a museum, I always try to find the most calming, the most abrupt landscapes. And there is really, he might have had an intention, especially from where the artist painted it from. But when it comes to those things, you are left with a feeling. Obviously, then you have to try to attempt that with poetry while having words on top of it.
And they
try to,
yes.
you know.
With poetry, you have words, and it's because words have meaning, you have to create a meaning to understand what you've just read. If anything, of all the arts, I think poetry and writing in general is one of those where you kind of have to elicit a meaning. You can't just read it and just feel and not know what the hell you just read. If you don't know what the hell you just read, that's not reading. Pero again, anke il-fatt li nista' nisma' poeżija jiena u l-ktieb mhux qegħdin il-kliem mhux qegħdin qudiemi sewwa, nista' nismagħha u ġust ngħid stra ma nafx il-mod kif qaluha jew kif kif ġiet narrata, oġbitni ħafna. U nista' ngħid fuq xi xkienet għaslitx kien idea.
But then does that come down to the writer or the narrator?
But ma nafx, imma again, ma naħsibx li tagħmel differenza. If it left me with that feeling of, I don't know, I feel amazed, I feel that it's insightful, even though, again, do I actually know what it's about? No. I think it's done its job. Fl-aħħar mill-aħħar.
But to add to Keaton's point as well, it doesn't necessarily just restrict yourself to poetry. It can also be any other art form. Art in itself, the whole point of the existence of art is to make you feel something, not to find a certain meaning. What was that piece in modern art and so that we studied the urinal? I forgot what it was called.
Just I don't know what it's called. I'll look it up quickly. Go on.
The urinal with the signature of the artist. I think it had something written on it. It's stupid. It's silly.
The Fountain by Marcel Duchamp.
The Fountain.
And it is just literally, I've seen this in person. It's just a urinal with his signature
I mean,
on it.
Ara, put it this way, I just laughed at that. Is that the point?
Yeah.
Is that the exact point of it? So I laugh?
Not
even-
necessarily. It's more for
even if
people
it's not
who take...
meant-
It's something, I don't personally like it, but it's something done on purpose because you're not meant to like it. It's meant to be absurd. It's meant to be something that ticks people that take it too seriously off.
And does that work? Does it work as art?
I think it definitely works because you see a lot of people that are like, what is this and whatever. And I'm like,
Masra, let me
I'm
bust
just
out
laughing.
my sock essay from a few years ago and tell you, Andrea, if it is art. It's obviously you're gonna go, art is a medium, so it's art. Does it make it very creative art? Another discussion. But then art doesn't have to be the most creative.
Art just needs to be art. It just needs to make you feel like that. Makes me feel what the hell was this guy thinking? You know what I mean? Which is I think was the intent of the artist.
I would imagine. I mean, if it's not,
If
but you have to say, well, what pills is he taking? Because to me, that if you're genuinely meaning that as a serious like piece of artistic work, and I'm like, as bis kont, you know, tamil il-lazz ta' Picasso, taf kif? Jien hekk naraħ stramba. Ma jekk il-punt huwa biex ħadd jara ħajdi x-xil-istra qed nara jien u jinfaq jitħaq bħalma għadni kif għamilt jien issa xorejtieli, mela it's done his job. Tifhem? U fl-aħħar mill-aħħar issa bħala valur monetarju ma nafx imma bħala l-valur tal-arti, jekk dak kien il-punt għamlet xogħla. U jiena qatt ma nista' nikkritika imma mhux wieħed li għandi arti li nipprattika fil-verità ħlif kitba.
Mhux anke jiena. As il-kitba ma nista' niġġudika ngħidlek jiena jien neqred għax there's more qualified opinions. It is all something that it will exist, let it exist and move on.
Ekku. Naqbel. Biex nieħu naqa' curveball, di forsi mhux se fuq poetry in ġenerali, pero għax nitkellmu fuq l-arti u fuq kif l-arti ġalek tħoss. X'taħsbu fuq l-arkitettura? Għax di forsi xi ħaġa li jiena tajt każ iktar fuq ma l-arkitettura għal xi raġuni il-bini qabel kien isir bċertu ma nafx kif ħanejt, imma naqa' grandeur, I guess, il-kelma jew hemm sens ta' superiorità fil-bini, speċjalment ara bini qadimi ġifieri qed ngħidu
L-unika bini li għad fadlilna u l-bini li kien mibni mis-Sinjur. Mhux
Ekku.
il-Garigor tal-Malti.
Ekku le minn daqshekk għandek raġun. Però llum il-ġurat anke il-binijiet moderni. Isom id-diżinn tagħhom huwa non-eżistenti kważi kull binja li tara l-istess blueprint u tmur ġo xi raħal ma tara xejn differenti minn raħal li ieħor m'hemm l-ebda identità u ngħid għal xiex isun tilfeddja u fl-istess ħin ngħid ukoll għal xiex qabel kienu jibnu b'dik l-intenzjoni biex ikun hemm misbuħija. U llum il-ġurnata xejn.
In my opinion, we've just moved away from a place where art can fit in when it comes to buildings, unfortunately. Għax ta' kemm mhux ħadd titfa' xi możajk ħadd titfa' xi graffiti fuq il-bini, m'għandekx dal-ġebel kollu li tista' titfa' fuqu u tiskulturaħ fl-tridinti.
Do you think that maybe but that's because that's a very interesting point what Jake just said, but would you still accept, for example, modern buildings as a form of art?
Ija le, u for sure hemm iżbuħija tagħhom. Jiena ġast qed ngħid li tikkumpara, I mean ngħidu jekk familjari mal-binja tal Sagrada Familja ġo Barcelona. I mean, impressjonanti l-arkitettura u hija mibnija b'raġuni mhix ġast mibnija biex tgħid okej għandna xi ħaġa sabiħa fiċ-ċittà.
Imma ngħid imma se tkun kontradittorju inti għax biex tagħmel urinal u tagħmel il-ferma and you bring out a meaning that way, it's okay.
Le, għandek raġun.
Ija l-istess argument li xaħat li kien iffissat bil-rinaxximent u bl-arti ta' rinaxximent u daw l-skulturi kbar u daw il-portraits u bada ħares lejda l-urinal. Or let's at least keep the same medium, look at Jackson Pollock. It's apples and oranges. Doesn't mean you'd like the oranges, but they are apples and oranges.
Like, do you think maybe, let's say, as we're talking in a sense, a now sense, in the present, do you think that maybe in the past there weren't, like for example, some farmer from Gudia, for example, that wow, these all these British buildings, where's the Maltese identity? They had the same predicament or the same problem, just now we just have modernized it, we've just replaced it.
Nista' niggarantijilek di, mhux Gudia farmer, imma hu il-Knisja Protestanta fil-Furjana, intu diħil il-belt. There was a big resistance to that when those types of churches started being built. Who għawdex għandhom ħafna British style churches emmek. No, they're not Protestant, naturally, ma per esempio Tapino is not a Baroque church. It is not laden in gold. U kien hemm resistenza kbira liha. Doesn't mean that they were wrong. It is simply ismani għal-maduf. Meta ħarġu bil-televisions, min kienu ħob jaqra l-gazzetta kien jeqred. Meta ħarġu bil-mobiles, dawk ta' television. The passage of time. It's like we start from a point where we say everything is good, but as soon as the passage of time starts, we're like, but where did the good stuff go? So, I think it's quasi-natural, unfortunately. of course, for me, obviously, is also part of that system that has that sense of normal.
It's a very interesting point. Very interesting.
I brought that up, dak l-eżempju tal-arkitettura. U għandek raġun għax vera kont tinkun kontradittorju. Imma fl-istessin naħseb li palma hemm punt li tibni biżbuħija, naħseb hemm punt li tibni mhux bikruwa, imma b'nuqqas ta' dizin kważi b'mod minimalist.
But isn't that a style in itself?
It's a style in itself, imma jien
Don't
naħseb.
people like minimalist?
Sewa, imma x'inhu l-emozzjoni li toħroġ int meta tara binja qadima u tgħid kemm hi glorjuża u x'inhu l-emozzjoni li toħroġ meta tara l-istess binja f'ħames blokki differenti, f'ħames irħula differenti u tgħid kollox l-istess, xejn differenti, xejn kważi sabiħ, għal xiex għax qed taraħ kollimkien, allura mhuwiex unique. Allura jiena dik l-argument huwa li palma ngħidu li dak il-jurin il-ġalni nitħaq. Daw il-binjiet nibda ngħid l-astra. Xi dwejja, kollox l-istess, kollox gris, kollox konkrit, jew inkella ġust ħġieġ. U ngħid mela isli kieku qabel kienu jinbnew bil-punt li jkun hawn l-isbuħija, jkun hawn xi ħaġa x'tammira, jkun hawn l-identità li tista' tassimila mal-fejn tkun qiegħed. Imma llum il-ġurnata kollox l-istess. Fl-arkitettura.
This one might get me into trouble. But this is my architecture. This is my opinion on the architectural point of view. Ija jina li hija palissa di eżatt li tgħid inti, issa mhux ħan ninkludi binjiet tal-konkos ejja ħammorru, ħantellaw 4 blokkijiet, ħantellaw 20 flats bejnietom u nbiħħuhom kummerċjalment biss. I'll give an example, for example, like Mercury Towers, which there is very clearly design in it. I compare what architecture students are being taught and what those architects did there with a poet who gets lost in his own writing. That would use, palma kontet ngħid qabel, all these fancy words and so impressed and chuffed with himself. And when he looks at it, he finds the meaning. I find these types of projects where only an architect can appreciate it when looking at the blueprint. And there is design in it. And there is trust. There is engineering grandeur in it. Uncompared tipo ġifieri to the past. No offense to the past. Għax qalma toffi qabel biex narmaw kopla konna mbagħtu għasib wara l-lum il-ġurnata x'naqblu.
It's to you it is just simply the next step. It's the evolved form of it.
I wouldn't call it the next step. It's more that is what I see happening. It's just like I wouldn't say the next step for poetry. It's for everyone to get lost in their own writing.
As in next step that this is the well, not the natural way of going this, but this is new and we shouldn't deny that it's new. We should accept that it's there.
I wouldn't say accept it. I would more at least approve that it's there and rationalize that it's there, tipo.
Exactly. And try
because you can't go, oh, there is no, because there is meaning. Just it is lost to us. They are no longer building
and
to impress others. They're trying to impress themselves.
That's precisely why I brought up the example of the La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, because it's built to make you feel small in the presence of God, as it's a church. Issa, believe in God, don't believe in God, għamel it-trit. Imma,
That's the point.
Imma, there is a point to the art that everyone can get. This is what I'm alluding to with these buildings. It's like there is no point. It's almost like meant to, I don't know, keep you like complacent to whatever's around you and not appreciate and not...
the main point you have to realize is commercial.
Obviously, yes. And eventually, essentially, if it's cheaper to do what they did, they're going to do what they did.
There you go.
Ovvjament. Daka, ma nafx l-istoria tal-Malti naħseb jien u l-istoria tal-grid tad-dinja.
Nekku.
Mela. From we have quite an interesting conversation. It was very incredible how we progressed from poetry to architecture. I think it's very interesting how a conversation can delve differently.
Yeah, wait for all the architecture students I know to literally bash my brains out as soon as I see them. Thank you.
More comments for us. More
Engagement. The goal is to piss off as many people as we can.
That's not the goal, Jay. You can't say.
Isn't it always the goal?
Any publicity is good publicity.
Rima.
Kont ħan nistaqsuk that if you want to, which mid-dera.
Ejwa ta'
Taqra extract minn Lords biex turi I think when a poet treats on poetry, I think it's more powerful because you actually hear the original intention in the
Ekku.
voice. So by all means, Keaton, choose your poem.
Gotta make this quick though, we have like 2 minutes.
I am going to speedrun it. Mela. Waħda bil-Malti jew?
Li trid.
Jiena naħseb li appropriate bil-Malti. La qegħdin Malta.
Mela bil-Malti.
It feels like a countdown.
As like
It is a bit of a countdown, unfortunately. I do apologize.
The time is going down. You're just there like, is he gonna fucking find this thing?
And that's all the time we have for today. Mela.
It-titlu huwa dak kollox għallu.
Dak kollox għallu. Mela. Din jisima fl-imħuħ. Sfortunat mux ħajkolli daqsekin biex nispjega. But I think that's a good thing. Fl-imħuħ. Xbiza fik kif sibt il-ħnina tijaj u bżaqta minnu fiħ u bżaqtni minn sensik. Kif sibt ruħi mxajtan fħanek ħaddiħor, imkabbar fos l-allat u l-baruni. Nefaqt l-fidi fihom sibtni, qalbi l-ħlewa ġewwa l-frankuni. Tajjart kull biża taħiltek minn ġol irkejjen ta' tjobiti, kif Brit. Is-siġillat u preservat fl-irkejjen ta' qalbi u qabli, bħal teddida fost l-irmiet. Stallet wara l-kwinti, aħna nżefnu l-arroganza tagħna. Nisnu fost il-presepju ta' realtà li ħlaqna ġeju sejjer ħelu manna. Xbiża fik, Madonna xbiża fik. Ir-rad li qed ittajjar ħerġin minn fom biswit. Xbiża fija, miżmum mal-art, irħam imtappan bid-dija. Dak kollox.
Very powerful stuff.
Very powerful.
Very powerful stuff.
La bil-Malti.
Vera proset, well done. Very incredible work, what you're doing or what you did.
Thank you.
Vera,
If you say so.
if you say so, yes. Imma, that's all we have for today.
You have to wrap this up.
We have to wrap this up quickly. Mala, thank you very much for listening. It was a very much a pleasure having you here,
It
Keaton.
was for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.
Nishtiq nirringrazzjakom tal rajtu episodju ieħor kustuża l-ustuża sabiħa ta' Fil-Qosor. Followjana fuq Spotify, YouTube u Instagram. U ftakar biex xerja ma' sħabek. Jekk għandek. Naraw l-episodju li jmiss ta' Fil-Qosor. Ciao!